If you enjoyed this audiobook, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the audiobook. Chapter 1, Setting the Stage, To Rent or to Buy. Part 1, The Great Debate, Why It Matters to You. Sarah Chen sits in her San Francisco apartment, staring at a $150,000 studio listing on her laptop screen. Down the hall, her neighbor Jake is celebrating paying off his mortgage on a nearly identical unit he bought for $320,000 15 years ago. Both made smart choices for their circumstances. Yet Sarah questions her decision to rent, while Jake sometimes wonders if he should have stayed flexible longer. This daily reality captures why the rent versus buy debate matters far more than most people realize. The housing choice you make today shapes everything from your Saturday mornings to your retirement plans. Consider how Amanda Rodriguez, a marketing executive featured in Jane Hodges' research, spent 3 years house hunting in Denver while renting. Her friends called her indecisive, but when the 2020 market surge hit, her flexibility allowed her to relocate to Austin for a dream job, while her homeowner friends remained trapped by underwater mortgages and selling costs. This decision extends beyond financial spreadsheets into the fabric of your daily existence. Homeownership traditionally represents stability and the American dream. Yet for many millennials and Gen Z professionals, renting provides the freedom to pursue career opportunities, travel extensively, or invest in experiences rather than maintenance costs. The choice becomes a reflection of personal values rather than purely economic logic. Your housing decision impacts how you build wealth, manage risk, and structure your life goals. Research from Rob Dix's property investment studies shows that successful investors often rent their primary residence while owning investment properties elsewhere. This strategy separates emotional attachment from financial optimization, something traditional advice rarely addresses. Different life stages demand different housing strategies. Fresh graduates benefit from rental flexibility while building careers and exploring cities. Young families might prioritize stable monthly payments and community roots. Empty nesters could value maintenance-free living over property appreciation. Career changers need mobility options that homeownership often restricts. The psychological aspect runs deeper than financial calculations. Homeownership provides security and control, but demands significant time, money, and emotional investment. Renting offers flexibility and reduced responsibility, but requires accepting landlord decisions and potential displacement. Neither choice is inherently superior. Both serve different life priorities and risk tolerances. Your housing choice also reflects broader economic understanding. Brandon Turmer's rental property research demonstrates that wealthy investors often separate their living situation from their investment strategy entirely. They might rent luxury apartments while owning multiple rental properties, prioritizing cash flow over homeowner status. The decision ultimately becomes a mirror reflecting your values, goals, and life vision. Understanding this personal dimension helps you move beyond cultural pressure and social expectations toward a choice that genuinely supports your unique circumstances and aspirations. The right answer exists only within the context of your specific situation, timeline, and priorities. Part 2, Myths and Truths, What Everyone Gets Wrong. When Sarah Martinez proudly posted photos of her new townhouse on social media in 2019, friends showered her with congratulations. "Finally building equity instead of throwing money away on rent," her mother commented. 2 years later, Sarah sold at a $40,000 loss after a job relocation, while her former rental apartment had appreciated faster than her owned property. Her story illustrates America's most expensive housing myth. The belief that renting equals financial waste runs so deep that it shapes major life decisions without scrutiny. This conventional wisdom emerged from a different era, when homes cost 3 times annual salaries, not 8 times. Jane Hodges' research reveals that in high-cost markets like San Francisco or New York, renters who invested their down payment money in index funds often accumulated more wealth than homeowners over identical timeframes. Consider the true cost comparison that most people skip. Homeownership includes property taxes, maintenance, insurance, and opportunity costs. Rob Dix's analysis shows that maintenance alone averages 1 to 2% of home value annually. On a $400,000 home, that's $4,000 to $8,000 yearly before addressing major repairs. Meanwhile, renters redirect these funds toward investments or emergency savings. The mobility penalty hits hardest during economic shifts. David Green's data demonstrates that homeowners who bought before 2008 took an average of 12 years to break even after transaction costs. Renters, during this period, could relocate for better opportunities without financial anchors. Tech worker James Chen exemplifies this advantage, moving between Seattle, Austin, and San Francisco as his career evolved, while his homeowner colleagues missed promotions requiring relocation. Cultural pressure creates another distortion. Brandon Turner surveys reveal that 67% of homebuyers purchase primarily for social validation rather than financial analysis. This emotional decision-making leads to overextension. The Federal Reserve found that households spending more than 30% of income on housing payments showed significantly higher financial stress regardless of equity accumulation. Geographic arbitrage offers renters unique advantages. Remote worker Maria Santos rented a luxury apartment in Portland while her tech salary remained San Francisco level. Her housing costs dropped 40%, while her quality of life improved. Homeowners face greater friction when pursuing such strategies. Market timing reality contradicts popular wisdom. Safe as Houses author Stephen Green tracked identical properties over 15-year periods, finding that rental yields often exceeded homeownership returns when transaction costs and opportunity costs were included. The key difference was liquidity and flexibility. Smart renters treat housing as a service, not an investment. They invest down payment money in diversified portfolios, maintain emergency funds, and preserve career mobility. This approach requires discipline but offers superior financial outcomes in many scenarios. The question isn't whether renting wastes money, but whether rigid homeownership thinking wastes opportunities. Part 3: The personal side, how your story shapes your choice. When Sarah's startup offered her a promotion, requiring relocation to 3 cities over 2 years, her mortgage became an anchor weighing down her career dreams. Meanwhile, her brother Jake chose renting in the same market and effortlessly seized opportunities across the country. Their divergent paths reveal how personal circumstances, not financial formulas, determine the right housing choice. Your life story shapes every major decision, and housing sits at the center of that narrative. Career trajectories, family dynamics, personal values, and future aspirations all influence whether renting or buying serves your unique journey. The spreadsheet analysis matters, but it represents just one chapter in a much larger book about how you want to live. Consider career flexibility. Digital marketing consultant Maria Rodriguez discovered this firsthand when remote work opened doors to clients nationwide. Her rental arrangement allowed her to relocate from expensive San Francisco to affordable Austin, doubling her purchasing power overnight. Her mortgage-free status enabled rapid pivots that homeowner competitors couldn't match. The decision aligned perfectly with her entrepreneurial goals. Family expectations often clash with personal reality. When accountant David Chen felt pressure from his parents to buy immediately after college, he resisted their traditional mindset. Instead, he rented for 5 years while building his practice and exploring different neighborhoods. This patience allowed him to purchase strategically in his ideal area rather than settling for what he could afford initially. Geographic preferences reveal deeper values. Mountain enthusiast Tom Williams prioritized proximity to hiking trails over ownership equity. His rental in Aspen cost significantly more than buying elsewhere, but the lifestyle alignment proved invaluable. He invested his down payment savings in index funds, ultimately building more wealth than comparable homeowners while living exactly where he wanted. Life stage timing affects everything. Recent divorcee Jennifer Park needed flexibility to rebuild her life and career. Renting provided emotional breathing room and financial simplicity during a challenging transition. 2 years later, with clarity about her future direction, she made an informed purchase decision rather than rushing into homeownership during personal upheaval. Risk tolerance varies dramatically between individuals. Conservative teacher Robert Kim felt genuinely stressed about market fluctuations affecting his primary residence value. Renting eliminated that anxiety, allowing him to sleep peacefully while investing systematically in diversified portfolios. His aggressive investor friend thrived on property appreciation speculation. Both approaches succeeded because they matched personal temperaments. Travel priorities create another dimension. Freelance photographer Lisa Chang structured her life around international assignments. Her rental flexibility enabled months-long projects abroad without property maintenance concerns or mortgage payment stress. The geographic freedom directly supported her income potential. Ask yourself honest questions about your authentic priorities. Do you crave stability or flexibility? Does property ownership feel like security or burden? Are you building roots in one community or exploring multiple locations? Your answers matter more than conventional wisdom or family pressure. The right choice supports your actual lifestyle rather than fighting against it. Financial optimization means nothing if the decision creates daily friction with your genuine goals and values. Part 4. Stories from the field. Real people, real decisions. When Sarah Mitchell graduated from college in 2008, she watched her older sister struggle with an underwater mortgage while she settled into a cozy rental apartment in Austin. 10 years later, their financial positions tell a story that defies every piece of conventional wisdom their parents had shared about building wealth through home ownership. Sarah's sister purchased her first home in Phoenix just months before the market crashed, believing that waiting meant missing out forever. The $280,000 townhouse became worth $150,000 within 2 years. While she battled negative equity and job insecurity, Sarah was packing her belongings for a promotion that required relocating to Denver. The contrast shaped how both women viewed housing decisions for the next decade. Meanwhile, James and Linda Rodriguez made the opposite choice during the same period. They rented a small apartment in San Francisco while saving aggressively, waiting for the right market conditions that never seemed to arrive. By 2018, watching their rent climb from $2,400 to $4,200 monthly while home prices soared beyond their reach, they realized their caution had cost them hundreds of thousands in potential equity. Their story illustrates how market timing can work against even the most financially disciplined families. Consider Maria Santos, a freelance graphic designer who chose to rent specifically because her income fluctuated unpredictably. When clients disappeared during economic downturns, her modest rental payments felt manageable compared to what mortgage payments would have demanded. Her flexibility allowed her to downsize during lean periods and relocate when opportunities emerged in different cities. After 15 years of renting, she had built a substantial investment portfolio while maintaining the lifestyle that supported her creative career. Then there's Tom Bradley, who bought his first property at 25 in Cleveland. Real estate prices were reasonable, and his engineering job provided stable income. 20 years later, he owns 4 rental properties generating $2,800 monthly in passive income. However, he spent countless weekends managing repairs and dealing with difficult tenants. His wife often jokes that he bought himself a part-time job disguised as an investment. The most surprising story comes from Rachel and David Chen, digital nomads who spent 8 years renting different places worldwide. They eventually returned to Portland and purchased a duplex, living in one unit while renting the other. Their years of renting had taught them exactly what tenants valued, making them excellent landlords. Their unconventional path led to both the flexibility they craved and the stability they eventually desired. Each of these individuals faced unique circumstances, market conditions, and personal priorities. Their outcomes weren't predetermined by following universal rules about renting versus buying. Instead, Success came from aligning their housing choices with their authentic situations, career trajectories, and financial capabilities at specific moments in their lives. These stories reveal an essential truth. The rent or buy decision isn't about finding the universally correct answer. It's about understanding your current reality and making choices that support your actual goals rather than the goals others expect you to have. Chapter 2: Peeking Behind the Curtain. What renting really means. Part 1: The Freedom Factor. Flexibility and life on the move. When Sarah Martinez received a job offer in Singapore just 3 days before Christmas 2019, she faced a decision that would have paralyzed most homeowners. Her San Francisco apartment lease expired in January. Her belongings fit into 4 suitcases, and by New Year's Day, she was boarding a plane to start fresh on the other side of the world. This kind of radical life pivot happens more often than you might think, and it's precisely why rental flexibility has become one of today's most undervalued financial advantages. The traditional American dream narrative suggests that mobility equals instability, but modern career realities tell a different story. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the average person changes jobs 12 times during their career, with many requiring geographic moves. Tech workers like Martinez have discovered that renting creates opportunities that homeownership simply cannot match. Within 2 years of her Singapore move, she had leveraged her international experience to land a senior position with a 40% salary increase back in Austin. Another move that took just 30 days to execute. Consider the contrast with homeowners facing similar opportunities. When Netflix offered to relocate entire teams from Los Gatos to other global offices in 2020, homeowners faced months of property preparation, realtor fees averaging 6% of home value, and the stress of timing closings with cross-continental moves. Many simply declined the opportunities. Renters packed and left. The emotional weight of this difference extends beyond career moves. Maria Santos, a freelance consultant from Portland, discovered this during her father's illness in 2021. She broke her lease, paid a 2-month penalty, and spent 8 months caring for him in Phoenix. A comparable homeowner scenario would have involved either maintaining 2 mortgages or rushing to sell during a family crisis. The financial flexibility of renting, even with penalties, provided breathing room during a devastating personal period. This mobility advantage compounds in uncertain economic times. During the 2008 recession, renters in hard-hit areas like Detroit and Las Vegas could relocate to markets with better job prospects. Homeowners often found themselves trapped by underwater mortgages, unable to move even when employment opportunities existed elsewhere. The psychological burden of being geographically stuck while financially struggling created a double trap that rental flexibility could have avoided. Yet this freedom carries its own challenges. The constant awareness that you could move can prevent the deep community connections that create lasting social networks. Some renters report decision fatigue from continuously evaluating whether their current situation remains optimal. The flexibility that empowers also demands ongoing choice-making that homeownership simplifies through commitment. The key insight? Flexibility functions as a form of insurance against life's unpredictability. In our rapidly changing economy, the ability to respond quickly to opportunities or challenges may prove more valuable than building equity in any single location. Part 2: The Cost Puzzle. What you're really paying for. When Sarah calculated her monthly rent at $2,400, she felt confident about her housing costs. But after 3 years of renting the same Chicago apartment, unexpected expenses had quietly accumulated. 2 security deposit forfeitures totaling $800, emergency hotel stays during building repairs costing $600, and moving costs when her lease wasn't renewed, adding another $3,200. Her seemingly predictable housing expense had hidden variables that financial calculators never capture. The rent versus buy debate often oversimplifies cost comparisons by treating rent as a single unchanging expense. In reality, Renting creates a unique financial ecosystem where certain costs disappear entirely, while others emerge unexpectedly. When property taxes increase by $200 monthly in your neighborhood, homeowners absorb this directly. Renters experience it as gradual rent increases spread across lease renewals, creating an illusion of protection from market fluctuations. Consider the case of tech workers in Austin during 2020 to 2022. While homeowners faced property tax bills jumping from $8,000 to $12,000 annually due to rapid appreciation, renters initially seemed insulated. However, those same market forces drove average rents from $1,800 to $2,600 within 2 years. Renters experienced the same economic pressure as a sudden 44% increase rather than the homeowner's gradual assessment adjustments. Jane Hodges' research in Rent versus Own reveals that renters typically underestimate their true housing costs by 15 to 20% when accounting for move-related expenses, temporary housing during transitions, and rent escalations over time. Meanwhile, they overestimate homeownership costs by focusing on worst-case scenarios like major repairs while ignoring tax benefits and forced savings through equity building. The hidden savings of renting become apparent in maintenance-heavy properties. Take older buildings in cities like Boston or San Francisco, where heating system failures, plumbing emergencies, and structural issues can cost homeowners $15,000 to $30,000 annually. Renters transfer these risks entirely to landlords, creating genuine value that's difficult to quantify but substantial in practice. However, renting's cost structure includes unique vulnerabilities that homeowners never face. Lease non-renewals force expensive relocations, regardless of personal timing preferences. Market rate increases can price out long-term residents within months. Security deposits create cash flow challenges during transitions, often requiring renters to fund overlapping housing costs. The strategic insight lies in recognizing that renting and owning represent different risk profiles, rather than simply different cost levels. Renting trades the catastrophic risk of major repairs and market downturns for the chronic risk of displacement and rent inflation. In high volatility markets or during career uncertainty, this trade-off often favors the renter's position. Understanding these dynamics helps clarify why renting can be financially superior during specific life phases, particularly when factoring in opportunity costs of down payments and the flexibility premium that comes with avoiding long-term debt obligations. Part 3. Landlord Tales: What It's Like on the Other Side. Margaret Chen learned this the hard way when her carefully screened tenant, a software engineer with stellar credit, suddenly stopped paying rent during the 2020 pandemic. Despite having every legal protection in place, she spent 4 months in eviction proceedings while still covering the mortgage, property taxes, and maintenance costs on her duplex investment. This story illustrates a fundamental truth about landlording that most renters never consider. Being a landlord is far more complex and risky than simply collecting monthly checks. When Rob Dix surveyed over 1,000 UK landlords for his property investment research, he found that 73% cited tenant-related stress as their primary concern, more than market fluctuations or maintenance costs. Consider Tom Bradley, who owns 3 rental properties in Austin, Texas. He deliberately prices his units $200 below market rate because he values stability over maximum profit. "I'd rather have someone stay 3 years at $1,800 than chase $2,000 and deal with turnover every year," Bradley explains. His math makes sense. Tenant turnover costs average $3,500 between lost rent, cleaning, repairs, and advertising. A stable tenant paying slightly below market actually generates more profit than constantly chasing peak rents. This perspective challenges the common renter assumption that landlords are purely profit-driven. Many successful landlords prioritize cash flow predictability over rental maximization. They understand that happy tenants take better care of properties, report maintenance issues early, and provide referrals for future vacancies. Jane Hodges documented numerous cases where landlords offered lease renewals below market rate to retain quality tenants. Sarah Kim, a Seattle landlord, kept her tenants' rent flat for 2 years because she treats the place like her own home and pays consistently. The avoided costs of marketing, screening, and preparing the unit for new tenants often exceed potential rent increases. However, landlords face genuine constraints that affect rental decisions. Property taxes, insurance premiums, and maintenance costs rise independently of tenant behavior. When Brandon Turner analyzed landlord cash flow patterns, he found that most small landlords operate on margins between 10 to 20% of gross rent. A single major repair, like a roof replacement or HVAC system failure, can eliminate months of profit. Understanding these realities helps renters approach lease negotiations more effectively. Landlords appreciate tenants who communicate proactively about maintenance issues, pay consistently, and demonstrate property care. These behaviors signal lower management costs and reduce turnover risk. The most successful landlord-tenant relationships develop when both parties recognize their mutual interests. Tenants get stable housing and responsive maintenance, while landlords achieve predictable income and reduced management headaches. This dynamic explains why many experienced landlords prefer slightly below-market rents with quality tenants over constantly cycling through maximum rent tenants who create operational challenges. Part 4. When renting works best, finding your perfect fit. When Michelle Chang received a job offer in Berlin, just 8 months after settling into her dream apartment in San Francisco, she faced a decision that would define her next chapter. While her homeowner friends expressed sympathy for her impossible situation, Michelle packed her bags with excitement. As a renter, she simply gave her required notice and boarded a plane to pursue an opportunity that would accelerate her career by years. This scenario illustrates why renting becomes the strategic choice for certain life circumstances. The decision isn't about financial capability or long-term planning failure. It's about matching your housing to your actual reality, not your aspirations. Career-building years. Young professionals in fields like consulting, tech, or journalism often find themselves in Michelle's position. Sarah Chen, a management consultant featured in Jane Hodges' research, moved 4 times in 6 years across 3 cities. Each relocation brought salary increases that far exceeded any potential real estate appreciation. Her rental flexibility enabled her to accept opportunities in Boston, Austin, and Seattle without the burden of selling property in uncertain markets. The numbers support this approach. When your career trajectory involves potential relocations within 5 years, the transaction costs of buying and selling, typically 8 to 12% of a home's value, can eliminate any ownership benefits. Sarah's story demonstrates how renting becomes an investment in career growth rather than a housing compromise. Uncertain employment landscapes. Freelancers and gig economy workers face income volatility that makes homeownership particularly risky. Take Marcus Rodriguez, a successful graphic designer whose project-based income fluctuates between $3,000 and $15,000 monthly. While his annual earnings comfortably support homeownership, his irregular cash flow makes the fixed obligations of mortgage, taxes, and maintenance problematic. Marcus chose a rental arrangement that allows him to adjust his housing costs during lean months by taking on roommates or temporarily relocating to stay with family during extended travel assignments. This flexibility proved crucial during the 2020 pandemic, when many of his corporate clients reduced spending. Life transition periods. Renting shines during major life changes. Recent divorcees often need time to reassess their housing needs and financial capacity. Empty nesters might want to experiment with different neighborhoods or housing styles before committing to their next permanent home. Graduate students returning to school can't predict where opportunities will emerge post-graduation. Consider Dr. Janet Williams, who left her suburban family home after her children moved out. Rather than immediately downsizing to a smaller property, she rented a downtown loft for 2 years. This trial period revealed she actually missed having yard space and community connections, leading her to eventually purchase in a walkable neighborhood that balanced urban amenities with residential character. The key insight? Your current life stage should drive housing decisions, not theoretical future scenarios. Renting provides the breathing room to make informed long-term choices rather than reactive ones. Low-maintenance lifestyle preferences. Some people simply prefer delegating property maintenance to others. Dr. Robert Kim, a busy surgeon, values his weekends for family time rather than home repairs. His luxury rental includes concierge services, gym access, and professional maintenance. Amenities that would cost significantly more to replicate in owned property. This preference isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's about optimizing time allocation. When your hourly earning potential significantly exceeds maintenance costs, renting can be the economically rational choice. The common thread? Successful renters align their housing choice with their actual circumstances rather than fighting against them. Chapter 3: The Buying Adventure. Planting Your Flag. Part 1: Building Your Nest. The Joys and Challenges of Homeownership. The moment Sarah Martinez hung her first family photo on the living room wall of her Denver home in 2019, she experienced something no rental had ever provided: the profound satisfaction of making permanent changes to a space that truly belonged to her. That simple act of driving a nail into drywall represented freedom, investment, and belonging. Emotions that research from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University confirms drive 83% of Americans to view homeownership as a primary life goal. Yet, 3 months later, when her water heater failed during a February snowstorm, Sarah faced the harsh reality that homeownership comes with a $4,200 repair bill and no landlord to call. This duality defines the homeownership experience. Unparalleled emotional rewards balanced against significant financial responsibilities that many buyers underestimate. The psychological benefits of owning property extend far beyond simple shelter. Dr. William Rohi's longitudinal study at the University of North Carolina found that homeowners report 40% higher life satisfaction than renters, primarily due to increased control over their living environment. Consider how Microsoft executive David Chen transformed his Seattle bungalow's basement into a home theater, a $15,000 investment impossible in rental property. The ability to modify, improve, and personalize creates deep emotional connections that renters rarely experience. Community investment follows naturally from ownership. When homeowners know they'll remain in neighborhoods for years, they participate more actively in local governance and community improvement. Jane Hodges documents in her research how homeowners are 3 times more likely to join neighborhood associations and vote in local elections compared to renters. This engagement creates stronger communities and often increases property values over time. However, the financial responsibilities catch many buyers off guard. Real estate investor Brandon Turner estimates that maintenance costs average 1 to 3% of home value annually, meaning a $300,000 home requires $3,000 to $9,000 yearly upkeep beyond mortgage payments. Emergency repairs compound this burden unpredictably. Property taxes present another ongoing expense that varies dramatically by location. Texas homeowners face some of America's highest property tax rates at 1.8% annually, while Alabama residents pay just 0.4%. A $250,000 home generates vastly different tax obligations depending on location: $4,500 versus $1,000 annually. The emotional journey involves learning to balance pride of ownership with practical maintenance realities. Rob Dix's property management research shows that successful homeowners budget systematically for repairs, treating maintenance as inevitable rather than unexpected. Those who thrive view their homes as long-term investments requiring consistent care, similar to tending a garden that grows more valuable with attention. Smart buyers recognize that homeownership satisfaction depends heavily on realistic expectations and proper financial preparation before taking the plunge. Part 2: The Money Matters: Understanding Costs Beyond the Price Tag. When Sarah Martinez bought her first home in Denver, she thought the hardest part was coming up with the $40,000 down payment. 6 months later, a broken furnace, roof repairs from hail damage, and property tax reassessment taught her that the purchase price was just the beginning of her financial commitment. The mortgage payment represents only one piece of homeownership costs. Jane Hodges' research reveals that many buyers focus solely on principal and interest while overlooking the complete picture. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, and unexpected repairs can add 25 to 40% to your monthly housing costs. That $2,000 mortgage payment might actually cost you $2,800 when everything is included. Consider the maintenance reality that catches many buyers off guard. David Green's analysis shows that properties typically require 1% of their value annually in maintenance costs. A $300,000 home needs approximately $3,000 yearly for upkeep, $250 monthly that many first-time buyers never budget for. This isn't catastrophic repair money. It covers normal wear like paint touch-ups, HVAC servicing, and appliance replacement. Property taxes create another surprise for unprepared buyers. These vary dramatically by location and can increase substantially over time. Brandon Turner documents cases where buyers stretched to afford homes based on current tax assessments, only to face reassessments that increased their monthly obligations by hundreds of dollars within 2 years of purchase. Insurance costs fluctuate based on factors many buyers ignore during house hunting. Homes in flood zones, areas prone to natural disasters, or neighborhoods with higher crime rates carry significantly higher premiums. Rob Dix's Property Investment Guide emphasizes researching insurance costs before making offers, not after contracts are signed. Emergency repairs represent the wild card that derails many household budgets. Lane Kawaoka's Financial Freedom Framework recommends maintaining 6 to 12 months of mortgage payments in reserve specifically for homeownership surprises. When Mark Ferguson surveyed property investors, those who succeeded long-term consistently budgeted for the unexpected, treating repairs as inevitable rather than unlikely. HOA fees add another layer of ongoing costs that renters never face. These monthly or annual charges can range from modest lawn care fees to substantial assessments for community amenities and major repairs. Some associations impose special assessments for unexpected expenses like roof replacements or infrastructure upgrades. The key to realistic affordability assessment involves calculating total monthly housing costs, not just mortgage payments. Smart buyers multiply their potential mortgage payment by 1.3 to estimate true monthly costs. They research property tax trends in their target neighborhoods and obtain insurance quotes before falling in love with specific properties. Successful homeowners approach these costs systematically, creating dedicated savings accounts for property taxes, maintenance, and emergencies. They view these expenses as investments in their asset rather than burdens, understanding that proper maintenance protects and enhances property value over time. Part 3. Investing in your future, more than just a roof overhead. When Janet Chen bought her first duplex in Peartland in 2009, friends called her crazy for purchasing during the housing crisis. Today, that $180,000 property is worth $420,000, and the rental income from one unit has covered her mortgage payments for over a decade. Her story illustrates why understanding real estate as an investment vehicle, not just shelter, can transform your financial future in ways that renting simply cannot match. Property ownership creates wealth through 3 distinct mechanisms that work simultaneously. First, appreciation builds value over time. The National Association of Realtors data shows homes have appreciated an average of 3.8% annually since 1968, often outpacing inflation. Second, mortgage payments gradually build equity. Each monthly payment reduces your debt while increasing your ownership stake. Third, leverage amplifies returns. When you put 20% down on a $300,000 home that appreciates 5% annually, you earn $15,000 on your $60,000 investment, a 25% return. Consider the Martinez family from Austin, Texas. They purchased their home for $285,000 in 2015 with $57,000 down. By 2023, the property valued at $475,000, creating $190,000 in appreciation. Meanwhile, their mortgage balance dropped from $228,000 to $180,000, building $48,000 in equity through payments. Their total wealth creation exceeded $238,000 on their initial investment. However, real estate investment carries genuine risks that demand honest acknowledgement. Markets can decline, sometimes dramatically. Detroit homeowners who bought in 2005 watched values plummet 50% during the following recession. Property requires ongoing maintenance, unexpected repairs, and continuous financial commitment regardless of market conditions. Location drives everything in real estate investment success. Properties in growing job markets with limited housing supply tend to appreciate faster. Research local employment trends, population growth, and development plans before buying. Areas near expanding universities, corporate headquarters, or major infrastructure projects often show stronger long-term performance. The rent versus own calculation shifts dramatically when viewing property as investment. Consider Sarah Thompson, who rented a $2,000 monthly apartment in Denver while saving for a house. When she finally bought a similar home with an $1,800 mortgage payment, she immediately began building equity while enjoying potential appreciation. After 5 years, her housing costs remained stable, while rent in her former building jumped to $2,800 monthly. Smart buyers approach real estate investment with realistic timelines and proper preparation. They maintain emergency funds for repairs, research neighborhoods thoroughly, and buy properties they can afford, even if circumstances change. They understand that real estate wealth builds gradually through consistent ownership, not quick speculation. The mathematical advantage of homeownership becomes clear over extended periods. But short-term ownership can prove costly due to transaction expenses and market volatility. Successful real estate investors think in decades, not years, allowing compound appreciation and equity building to create substantial wealth over time. Part 4. Pitfalls and Triumphs. Lessons from buyers who've been there. Sarah Martinez thought she had perfect timing when she bought her Phoenix townhouse in 2007. Fresh out of college with a marketing job, she watched friends continue renting while she took the plunge into home ownership. "Everyone said I was smart to buy young," she recalls. "Build equity instead of throwing money away on rent." 18 months later, her property value had dropped 30%. The adjustable rate mortgage she'd chosen to qualify for the purchase reset higher just as her company downsized. Sarah faced a choice that thousands of buyers confronted during the housing crisis: walk away from the property or stay committed to a financial mistake. Her decision to stay taught her valuable lessons about timing and preparation. "I learned that buying isn't automatically better than renting," she explains. "It depends entirely on your situation and the market conditions." Sarah eventually recovered her losses, but it took nearly 8 years and required her to think like a long-term investor, rather than someone who simply wanted to own a home. Consider Michael Chen's different experience in Austin, Texas. He bought a modest duplex in 2012, living in one side while renting the other. Initially skeptical about dealing with tenants, Michael discovered that rental income offset most of his mortgage payment. When he relocated for work 3 years later, he kept the property as a full rental investment. "The key was buying something I could afford, even without rental income," Michael explains. His careful financial planning included maintaining 6 months of mortgage payments in reserve, researching the rental market thoroughly, and choosing a property in an area with strong job growth and university proximity. The contrast between Sarah and Michael illustrates how market timing and preparation significantly impact outcomes. Sarah's experience during the housing bubble demonstrates why emotional decisions often lead to financial stress. Michael's systematic approach shows how treating property purchase as both shelter and investment creates more resilient outcomes. Both learned that successful property ownership requires understanding local market conditions, maintaining adequate financial reserves, and having realistic expectations about property appreciation. Their stories reveal that homeownership success depends less on perfect timing and more on thorough preparation and conservative financial management. What separates triumphant buyers from those who struggle? The winners typically spend months researching neighborhoods, understanding total ownership costs, and ensuring they can handle mortgage payments even during income disruptions. They view property purchase as a long-term commitment rather than a quick path to wealth, approaching decisions with patience rather than fear of missing opportunities. Chapter 4: Making It Work. The Rent versus Buy Balancing Act. Part 1: Crunching Your Numbers. Simple ways to see what's right. Most people approach the rent versus buy decision armed with their monthly paycheck and a handful of online calculators, then wonder why their choice feels wrong 5 years later. Sarah Chen, a software engineer in Austin, spent months agonizing over whether to buy a $400,000 condo or continue renting her $2,200 apartment. She ran the numbers dozens of times, but kept getting different answers depending on which calculator she used. The problem wasn't her math skills. Sarah was missing the complete picture that financial advisors use when evaluating housing decisions. She focused solely on monthly payments while ignoring the hidden costs that separate smart housing choices from expensive mistakes. Start with the true cost comparison, not just mortgage versus rent. Take that $400,000 home with a 20% down payment. Your monthly mortgage might be $2,100, seemingly cheaper than Sarah's $2,200 rent. But add property taxes, $400 monthly, insurance, $150, maintenance reserves, $200, and HOA fees, $100. Suddenly, you're looking at $2,950 monthly versus $2,200 in rent. That $750 difference compounds to $9,000 annually. The equity calculation requires honest assessment of your local market. Brandon Turner, author of multiple real estate investment books, emphasizes that equity only builds when property values rise faster than your carrying costs. In Sarah's case, Austin properties appreciated 4% annually over the previous decade. On her $400,000 purchase, that's $16,000 yearly appreciation. Subtract $3,000 in transaction costs spread over her expected 5-year ownership, and she nets roughly $13,000 in equity gains annually. Compare this against investment alternatives. That $80,000 down payment invested in index funds historically returns 7% annually, generating $5,600 in the first year with compound growth thereafter. The $750 monthly difference between total housing costs could also be invested, adding another $9,000 yearly to her portfolio. Run the opportunity cost calculation. Sarah's total annual cost of ownership exceeds renting by $9,000, but she gains $13,000 in equity. Her net benefit is $4,000 annually, or $333 monthly. However, she ties up $80,000 in down payment capital and accepts maintenance responsibilities and reduced mobility. The mobility factor demands honest evaluation. Real estate agent commissions, closing costs, and moving expenses typically consume 8 to 10% of home value during sale. For Sarah's $400,000 home, that's $32,000 to $40,000. She needs at least 3 years of ownership to offset these transaction costs through equity gains. Consider your stability timeline. If you're likely to relocate within 3 years, renting usually wins financially. If you plan to stay 5 years or longer, buying often makes sense in markets with reasonable price-to-rent ratios. The sweet spot occurs when monthly ownership costs approximate rental costs in your area. This happens when home prices equal roughly 15 to 20 times annual rent. Sarah's $400,000 condo versus $26,400 annual rent created a ratio of 15.15, suggesting a reasonable buying opportunity if she planned to stay long-term. Calculate your personal break-even point using these simple steps. Determine total monthly ownership costs, subtract monthly rent, then divide transaction costs by the monthly difference. This reveals how many months of ownership you need to justify buying versus renting in your specific situation. Part 2. Timing is everything. When to hang tight or take the leap. Most people think buying a house is about finding the perfect home at the perfect price. But what if the most expensive mistake isn't overpaying for a property, but getting the timing completely wrong? Jane Hodges tracked hundreds of buyers and renters over a decade and found that those who succeeded focused less on market predictions and more on 3 critical timing factors that most people ignore entirely. Consider Tom, a software engineer in Austin, who waited 3 years to buy while his colleagues jumped into homeownership in 2018. They mocked his analysis paralysis as home prices climbed 15% annually. Tom kept renting his $2,200 apartment while carefully watching his personal situation. He tracked his job stability, relationship status, and financial cushion alongside market conditions. When the pandemic shifted his company to permanent remote work in 2020, Tom bought a house in a lower-cost neighborhood for 20% less than comparable homes cost 2 years earlier. His patient colleagues? Many faced job uncertainty while trapped in expensive mortgages in neighborhoods they no longer needed to live in. Your personal readiness matters more than market timing. Brandon Turner's research on rental property investors revealed that successful buyers share 3 stability markers before purchasing. First, they maintain the same job for at least 18 months with clear income predictability. Second, their major life decisions stabilize. No wedding plans, career changes, or family additions on the horizon within 2 years. Third, they accumulate emergency reserves covering 8 months of total housing costs, not just the down payment. Market signals provide the backdrop, but your life circumstances drive the decision. David Green's analysis of thousands of property transactions shows that buyers who purchase during major life transitions, new jobs, relationships, or family changes face 40% higher rates of selling within 3 years. The transaction costs alone eliminate most financial benefits. Sarah from our previous example had favorable numbers but poor timing. She bought her condo 6 months before accepting a promotion requiring relocation. The $25,000 in transaction costs and selling fees eliminated her entire equity position. Had she rented 1 more year, the promotion would have been available, and she could have purchased in her new city with full information. Watch for 3 green lights before buying: stable employment with predictable income, clear life trajectory for the next 5 years, and sufficient reserves beyond closing costs. When uncertainty clouds any of these areas, renting preserves flexibility while you gather more information. The cost of waiting 1 year typically runs $12,000 to $15,000 in continued rent payments. The cost of buying at the wrong time often exceeds $50,000 in transaction costs, opportunity losses, and financial stress. Smart timing means buying when your personal foundation supports homeownership, regardless of whether pundits declare it a buyer's or seller's market. Part 3. Tailoring your choice. Fit your decision to life's changes. Your 20-something years rarely match your 50-something reality, yet most people treat their housing choice as permanent. Research from the National Association of Realtors shows the average homeowner moves every 13 years, while life's major transitions happen far more frequently. This mismatch creates financial stress and missed opportunities that proper timing could prevent. Sarah Martinez bought her first home at 26 in Austin, excited about building equity. Within 3 years, she landed a promotion requiring relocation to Seattle. The transaction costs from selling wiped out her accumulated equity, leaving her financially worse off than if she'd rented. Her mistake wasn't buying too early. It was assuming homeownership fit her mobile career phase. Consider your housing decision through life stages rather than blanket rules. Your 20s often demand maximum flexibility. Career changes, relationship developments, and geographic moves happen rapidly. Renting preserves options when your path remains unclear. Jane Hodges documented dozens of young professionals who lost money buying before their lives stabilized, paying hefty transaction costs every few years. Family formation typically shifts the equation. Rob Dix's research shows couples with children value stability and space over mobility. The average family with kids stays put 7 to 10 years, long enough to absorb transaction costs and benefit from equity building. School districts, yard space, and neighborhood roots become priorities worth the commitment of ownership. Yet even families should reassess periodically. Mark and Linda Thompson bought a 4-bedroom house when their children were toddlers. 20 years later, with kids gone, they're paying taxes and maintenance on unused space. They could downsize and rent, freeing capital for retirement while eliminating home maintenance stress. Instead, they stay trapped by the assumption that homeownership must be forever. Career peaks in your 40s and 50s often bring highest earning potential and clearest long-term vision. This becomes prime buying territory if you haven't already purchased. Brandon Turner's analysis shows established professionals can maximize mortgage tax benefits and equity accumulation during peak earning years. Retirement brings another inflection point. Fixed incomes make property taxes and maintenance costs more burdensome. David Green documented retirees who sold homes to rent in desirable areas they couldn't afford to buy, using freed equity for investment income. Others moved to lower-cost regions, stretching retirement dollars further. Geographic flexibility matters too. Lane Kawaoka tracked professionals who rent in expensive coastal cities while owning rental properties in affordable markets. This strategy provides investment returns without the premium of living in high-cost areas. Your housing choice should evolve like your wardrobe. What fit 5 years ago might not serve today. Review your situation every 3 to 5 years, especially after major life changes. Marriage, divorce, job changes, children, and aging parents all warrant fresh evaluation. The key is matching your housing to your current reality, not your past assumptions or future dreams. Part 4. Creating your path. Combining renting and buying for success. Housing decisions don't have to be binary. While most people agonize between renting or buying, a growing number of investors and savvy individuals are discovering hybrid strategies that combine both approaches for maximum flexibility and financial gain. Consider Sarah Chen, a software engineer in San Francisco. Rather than buying an overpriced city condo, she rents a studio apartment while owning 3 rental properties in Columbus, Ohio. Her monthly rent costs $3,200, but her rental income generates $4,800 after expenses. This strategy gives her the flexibility to relocate for career opportunities while building wealth in affordable markets. She's essentially living rent-free while accumulating equity elsewhere. Mark Ferguson, author of Build a Rental Property Empire, documented similar cases among his clients. A teacher in Denver owns rental properties in Kansas City while renting her primary residence. She pays $2,100 monthly in rent, but collects $2,800 from her investment properties. When she received a job offer in Austin, she simply gave notice to her landlord, rather than dealing with selling a home in an uncertain market. The BRRR strategy, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, offers another hybrid approach. David Green profiled investors who live in rental properties temporarily during renovation, then move out once the property is rent-ready. This method allows them to oversee improvements closely while building their portfolio systematically. Part-time homeownership represents another creative solution. Weekend homes that generate rental income during weekdays have become increasingly popular. Airbnb data shows properties in mountain and beach towns often generate enough weekend and vacation rental income to cover most annual carrying costs. Owners enjoy their retreat, while tenants fund the mortgage. Geographic arbitrage works particularly well for remote workers. Lane Kawaoka tracked professionals who moved to lower-cost regions while maintaining rental properties in expensive metropolitan areas. A marketing executive relocated from Seattle to Boise, cutting her living expenses by 40% while keeping rental income flowing from her Seattle duplex. Some families embrace seasonal flexibility. The Johnsons own a home in Florida and rent in Chicago, switching residences based on weather and work cycles. This arrangement costs more than traditional ownership, but provides lifestyle benefits worth the premium. These hybrid approaches require more active management than simple renting or buying. You'll handle multiple properties, coordinate between locations, and manage varying tenant relationships. However, the flexibility and potential returns often justify the additional complexity. The key is matching your hybrid strategy to your specific circumstances. Consider your career mobility, management tolerance, and long-term goals. What seems complicated initially often becomes routine once systems are established. Chapter 5. Your Next Steps. Living Your Decision. Part 1. Planning Ahead. Crafting a roadmap for financial freedom. Most financial advisors tell you to separate housing costs from investment strategies, treating your monthly rent or mortgage payment as dead money. This perspective has caused millions of Americans to make housing decisions that actually sabotage their long-term wealth building. The truth is, your housing choice becomes the foundation of every other financial decision you'll make for the next decade. Consider the contrasting approaches of two Microsoft employees who started with identical $80,000 salaries in Seattle. Sarah bought a $400,000 condo with 20% down, while Mike rented a similar unit for $2,200 monthly. After 5 years, Sarah felt trapped by maintenance costs and property taxes that consumed her investment capacity. Mike, however, invested the difference in index funds and built a $180,000 portfolio while maintaining complete mobility. Neither approach was wrong, but only Mike had crafted a deliberate financial roadmap that aligned his housing choice with his wealth goals. Your housing decision creates a cascade effect throughout your entire financial life. When you buy, you're committing roughly 30% of your income to a single asset class, while shouldering maintenance, taxes, and transaction costs that can easily add another 10% annually. This leaves limited capital for diversified investments or emergency funds. Renters face different constraints. Rising rents can derail budgets, but they also maintain flexibility to relocate for better opportunities or downsize during economic uncertainty. The key lies in treating housing as one component of a comprehensive wealth strategy, not an isolated decision. Start by calculating your true monthly housing costs. Homeowners must include property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and opportunity cost of the down payment. For renters, factor in annual increases and moving costs. Then, determine how much capital remains for investments, emergency funds, and career development. Brandon Turner's analysis of successful rental property investors reveals they typically keep total housing costs below 25% of income, allowing maximum investment capacity. Meanwhile, Jane Hodges' research shows wealthy renters often invest the difference between renting and buying costs in diversified portfolios that outperform real estate over time. The most crucial element is consistency. Whether you rent or buy, automate your investment contributions immediately after housing payments. David Green's BRRRR strategy works because it creates systematic wealth building through real estate. Similarly, successful renters like Warren Buffett built fortunes by consistently investing housing savings in appreciating assets. Create specific milestones tied to your housing choice. Homeowners might target paying off their mortgage in 15 years while building separate investment accounts. Renters could aim for investment portfolios worth 10 times their annual rent within a decade. What matters isn't which path you choose, but how deliberately you integrate that choice into a broader wealth-building framework that compounds over time. Part 2. Tools and Tips. Smart moves for today and tomorrow. The tools you choose today determine whether your housing decision becomes a wealth-building machine or a financial drain. Most people rely on outdated calculators that ignore crucial factors like opportunity cost and true maintenance expenses. Smart decision makers use specific platforms and frameworks that account for the complete financial picture, not just monthly payments. Start with comprehensive calculators that go beyond basic rent versus mortgage comparisons. The New York Times Rent versus Buy calculator remains the gold standard because it factors in opportunity costs, tax implications, and real market dynamics. Unlike simplistic tools that assume home prices always rise, this calculator lets you input realistic scenarios. Real estate investor Rob Dix recommends using conservative growth assumptions rather than optimistic projections that led many to financial ruin during market downturns. For rental decisions, Zillow Rental Manager and Apartments.com provide market data, but combine these with RentBerry for auction-style bidding that can reduce costs. Property investors like Samuel Leeds emphasize using multiple listing services to identify undervalued rentals before they hit mainstream platforms. The key lies in accessing information before everyone else sees it. Mortgage shoppers benefit from platforms like LendingTree and Rocket Mortgage for initial comparisons, but Brandon Turner advocates speaking directly with local credit unions. His research shows credit unions often offer rates 0.25% lower than advertised online rates, potentially saving thousands over loan terms. Create a simple spreadsheet tracking offers from at least 5 lenders, including closing costs and hidden fees. Investment tracking becomes crucial, regardless of your housing choice. Mint and YNAB help monitor housing expenses. But successful wealth builders like those following David Green's BRRRR strategy use more sophisticated tools. Personal Capital tracks investment performance alongside housing costs, showing whether renting and investing beats homeownership returns. This visibility prevents emotional decisions based on incomplete data. Create decision-making checklists that prevent costly mistakes. Jane Hodges recommends listing deal breakers before house hunting or apartment searching. Emotional decisions during viewings often override rational criteria, leading to purchases or leases outside optimal parameters. Write down maximum acceptable prices, required features, and neighborhood criteria before starting your search. For ongoing success, automate wherever possible. Set up automatic transfers to investment accounts immediately after rent or mortgage payments. Lane Kawaoka's Wealth Elevator approach works because it removes emotional interference from consistent investing. Whether you rent or buy, the discipline of immediate wealth-building automation creates compound growth over decades. Technology amplifies good decisions, but cannot fix poor frameworks. The most sophisticated apps mean nothing without clear financial goals and realistic market expectations. Focus on tools that provide actionable data rather than entertainment value. And remember that successful housing decisions require consistent execution over years, not perfect prediction of market timing. Part 3. The Mindset Shift. Embracing ownership or renting as a lifestyle. When Melinda Martinez decided to rent a high-end apartment in downtown Austin instead of buying a starter home in the suburbs, her family questioned her sanity. 5 years later, as tech companies transformed her neighborhood and property values soared beyond her reach, she discovered something profound. She had made the right choice for entirely the wrong reasons. The most successful housing decisions stem from mental clarity, not mathematical perfection. Martinez initially rented because she feared mortgage debt, but she thrived because renting matched her career ambitions and travel lifestyle. The numbers worked, but more importantly, her mindset aligned with her choice. Rob Dix's research on property investors reveals a striking pattern. Those who commit fully to their housing strategy outperform those who constantly second-guess themselves. Renters who view their choice as temporary often overspend on upgrades to apartments they don't own. Homeowners who keep browsing real estate apps miss opportunities to optimize their current property's value. Consider Sarah Chen, featured in Brandon Turner's rental property case studies. After buying her first duplex, she spent months worrying about market timing and mortgage rates. Her breakthrough came when she stopped treating homeownership as a financial gamble and started viewing it as a long-term lifestyle commitment. She focused on building equity through improvements rather than monitoring daily market fluctuations. The mindset shift requires accepting that neither renting nor buying represents moral superiority. Jane Hodges documented how cultural pressure creates housing shame in both directions. Renters feel judged for throwing money away, while homeowners feel trapped by house poor syndrome. Both reactions stem from treating housing as a status symbol rather than a lifestyle tool. David Green's BRRRR strategy succeeds because investors approach each property decision with operational clarity. They don't buy homes hoping for appreciation. They buy based on cash flow potential and improvement opportunities. Similarly, strategic renters like Martinez don't rent hoping for market crashes. They rent to maximize career mobility and investment flexibility. Mental commitment transforms housing from an anxiety source into a wealth-building foundation. Lane Kawaoka's wealth elevator approach works because participants stop questioning their housing choice and start optimizing within it. Renters focus on maximizing savings rates and investment returns. Owners concentrate on equity building and property optimization. The confidence comes from recognizing that both paths lead to financial success when executed with intention. Stephen Green built his property empire not through perfect market timing, but through consistent action aligned with his chosen strategy. Similarly, successful renters build wealth by treating rent as a fixed cost that enables other opportunities, not a financial failure. Your housing choice becomes right when you stop treating it as a temporary compromise and start living it as a deliberate lifestyle strategy. The math supports both options. Your mindset determines which one builds wealth. Part 4. Stories to inspire. Real successes on both sides. When Sarah Martinez moved to San Francisco in 2012, everyone told her she was throwing money away on rent. 7 years later, she had accumulated $180,000 in investment accounts while her homeowner friends struggled with underwater mortgages. Meanwhile, across the country, James Chen bought his first duplex in Cleveland at age 26 and now owns 12 rental properties, generating $8,400 monthly in passive income. Sarah's story challenges the conventional wisdom that renters are financial failures. Working as a software engineer, she chose a one-bedroom apartment near downtown for $2,800 monthly instead of buying a $800,000 condo. The difference between her rent and what a mortgage payment would have been went straight into index funds. When the pandemic hit and tech companies went remote, Sarah relocated to Austin without the burden of selling property in a declining market. Her disciplined approach treated rent as the price of flexibility. She automated investments, maxed out retirement contributions, and built an emergency fund that homeowners often sacrifice for down payments. By 2019, her investment portfolio outpaced what she would have gained in home equity, even accounting for San Francisco's property appreciation. James took the opposite path with equally impressive results. After reading about the BRRR strategy in David Green's work, he purchased his first duplex for $75,000 with a $15,000 down payment. He lived in one unit while renovating the other, then refinanced based on the improved value to pull out his initial investment. The key to James's success was treating homeownership as a business venture, not an emotional decision. He focused on cash flow positive properties in working-class neighborhoods where rent-to-price ratios made sense. Each property generated enough rental income to cover its mortgage while providing monthly surplus for the next investment. What separated both Sarah and James from struggling peers was their intentional approach. Sarah didn't rent because she couldn't afford to buy. She rented because it aligned with her investment strategy and lifestyle goals. James didn't buy because society expected it. He bought because the numbers supported wealth building through real estate. Their contrasting paths prove that housing decisions aren't about right or wrong choices, but about commitment to a strategy. Sarah leveraged mobility and market access, while James built tangible assets and cash flow. Both approached housing costs as tools for wealth creation rather than necessary evils. The common thread between their successes was refusing to second-guess their decisions. They stopped comparing themselves to others and focused on executing their chosen strategy with discipline. Whether you follow Sarah's rental plus investment model or James's property accumulation approach, success comes from consistency and confidence in your path forward.